Hi, Jose and Leslie. So, this week's readings were no exception. I feel stretched and maybe a little inadequate to express all that I'm feeling, but here goes. So, in the Hope article, I really appreciated the approach that she took of compassion. And when you look at the world a certain way, whether you're in a privileged group or an oppressed group, and you realize that things are not as you thought they were and that you were complicit in the way things were, and you've come to realize that that wasn't a good thing, then there's a death of sorts. It's a death of a train of thought or a way of being. And so I think the recognition of that loss, no matter who it's coming from or the fear that it comes from for someone who doesn't want to change, is valid. You have to really think about whether you want to be right or whether you want to make progress and give that human being the compassion that maybe you were not given. So there were so many things in that, but I really appreciated that approach. The second thing within that article was looking at emotions as a way that we recognize how we embody our dominant values. Our body tells us things. When we feel something, it's triggered by a thought, and that thought comes from the way we see the world. And when we feel something, we can really question, why do I feel that way? It's because I see things a certain way, and is that a valid way to see things? And what am I going to do about it if it's not? I thought about a story when I was in college. I was walking arm in arm with a blind student that I was tutoring, and happened to be an African American male. And it was a small college town. It was a Chapel Hill in the 90s, so it wasn't nearly as big as it is now. And people would look at us as we walked arm in arm with disgust. It was a judgment that I had never experienced before, just looking at us like, why are you together and what are you doing? And then even worse was when they got closer, they would say, oh, it's okay because he's blind, that must be why you're together. And I realized that that doesn't give me understanding of what people of color have experienced over the years, that kind of judgment just based on skin color. But what it did for me is it made things a little more real. It made racism more alive to me and gave me a feeling that I could relate to, that would then spur me to action. And action to me doesn't mean, I didn't go out and join a group the next day, but what I did was I became very aware of how I made judgments and what I was feeling, and were my feelings toward someone of color, no matter what it was about, valid, and why were they that way? So a little bit of rambling there, sorry about that. But that does lead me into the second article about empathy and the difference between passive empathy and transformative empathy. And I think about the things that I read over the years, and really this whole idea that you have to be you have to experience this discomfort enough to want to go out and do something. And I remember the first book I probably read that gave me that was Night by Elie Wiesel. And all of us have probably read that book, but it was hard to read. It was gracefully written, but it was hard to read and experience that for even the short amount of time that it took to read the book. And after that, I wanted to go out and learn more about history and what happened with the Jews and their culture, and how really they've been persecuted for many, many generations and thousands of years, actually. So I think there is something to be said for that shift from passive to transformative. The last article really, when she said feminism articulated, politicized, and analyzed emotion to challenge oppression and raise collective consciousness. Really, that collective consciousness is what has moved us forward in the greatest strides throughout at least our history and law in the United States. And what collective consciousness does is it gives you power. And the people who have oppressed, or the groups that have oppressed, have actually used their power to fragment and not create that community that comes with collective consciousness. So from there, I just thought about how we use our mind to do so many things that create a feeling. We want to earn money so that we can feel secure. We go out and we marry people and have children because we want to feel loved and we want to feel interdependent. We do all these things so that really we get the feeling at the other end. So why is it that we are so disconnected and we don't want to recognize that as our mind-body connection? So anyway, those are my thoughts. Thanks for listening.